Hello folks, and welcome to another Irish whiskey review with me, Marty Macaulay. And tonight we are reviewing the Connacht Distillery's Spade and Bushel 12-year-old double barrel, bottled at 42.3% ABV. Limited edition, I don't know whether it's how limited it is, but 42.3 seems a strange number to be bottling. Just to let you know, this is a press sample. I was given this to review and see what I thought of it. I am not connected to the distillery, just to make sure. I just want everybody to know that this is where this bottle came from, so it's not a full bottle. The Spade and Bushel range, they have 3 in the range. They have a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, and the 12. This is not their own spirit. This is bought in spirit. They age it then themselves. Now it says double barrel, but there's nothing on the bottle to tell you what the 2 barrels are. If you go onto the website, not on this bottle, if you go onto the website, it says that it's premium first fill bourbon casks. I assume that the first casks were bourbon casks, and then to finish they've spent a couple of years in first fill. And if anyone doesn't know what first fill bourbon casks are, bourbon cask aged bourbon has to be aged in newly made charred oak. Can't be used and then reused. So after the bourbon industry has finished with them, normally after a couple of years, they then sell them on to other whiskey producers, whiskey distilleries, who then can age it in these barrels. So the first fill after the bourbon has been taken out. Okay, that's what they mean. So they'll have bought these in from the US, and this is the first spirit that's been in it since the bourbon was out. Now, this is about £65 for a 70 cl bottle. They have their own spirit coming, and it was quite funny. It was on a Belfast Whiskey Week. The guy who runs it got to taste this on live on camera. He had a little tear in his eye because he was the first person outside the distillery that's ever tasted it. So this was quite an emotional moment for him. So it'll take a while for him to live this down, you know. Good guy that he is. Now, colour wise, it's quite a light colour, and probably if there's colour in it, there's not a huge amount on the nose. Slight chocolate button note there that you get, but first and foremost you get citrus, fresh lime juice, lemon meringue. It's quite floral. There's almost like a cut flower note, maybe a touch of lavender. Quite a surprising note from it. The kind of, oak smoked meat. I don't mean the smoke. I mean the sweetness that you get off the meat. So that's there. It's got that sweetness mixed along with a slight savoury note, which comes across really quite well. So it's not the smoke. Don't get confused with that. It's the sweetness that comes into the meat coming from the smoke. That's what's in this. Probably, I mean, that's coming from the charcoal. That'll be coming from the bourbon, and that sweet flesh that you get when you smoke barbecued meats. It's got lemon. Again, it's quite fresh, quite sweet. Yes, quite nice on the nose actually, quite nice on the nose. Again, sweet, lemon meringue, sponge cake, good healthy hit of oak. But again, it's that sweet meat note that's quite a surprise in it. It comes across with that sort of sweetness without being saccharine or being too weak sweet, if you know what I mean. What I mean by that is sort of artificially sweet. I find sometimes bourbons can get that with it. They have that sort of injected sweetness coming from the charred oak that's overly sweet for my palate. I'm not keen on it. This, on the other hand, has picked up the sweetness. Fly interloper, go away. A little bit of the bourbon sweetness has dropped out. Higher strength bourbons are not as bad as ones at 40%. Once you go a little bit up, the alcohol takes that sweetness where it's too sweet for my palate. It's not something that I like particularly. But when it goes a little bit above the 40% alcohol, then the sweetness drops and it becomes much more palatable. That's probably why this has been bottled at 42.6. 42.3. Must be accurate with these things, guys. 42.3. Let's probably take a little bit of the age off the sweetness and not make it just as bourbony as possibly some of it could have been. It's not very oily, so the mouthfeel, which I think is always really important. For me, that's one of the most important things about a whiskey. Once it hits my mouth, that oily richness. There's not much of an oily texture to this. It's very clean, and that's probably what they're aiming for. And the finish, big oak, wood straight away, vanilla, custard coming through there. Again, a little bit of the nuttiness, like sugared almonds maybe. Again, it's this sweetness that's coming through. This wouldn't be something that I would sit down and sip over overnight. Well, I would take this as, lots of people know about aperitifs. They'll hear about an aperitif where you'll have a drink before a meal to stimulate your appetite. This would be more a digestive, something you'd have after your meal to help digest your meal, cleanse your palate. That's what this really reminds me of. It's something quite fresh, something quite cleansing. So if you've had a meal that's maybe a little bit heavy, one of these, it'll cleanse your palate, help digest your food. Unfortunately, the finish of it's quite short, so it's probably that freshness. That's probably where I'm getting that digestive thing from. It'll cleanse your palate without necessarily overpowering and lingering, where lots of other whiskies that would have a long finish that might take away a bit from the actual meal. So this is what I mean by that. It's cleansing. It cuts through a lot of any other taste that's going to be there. It'll cut through that. Let's say the Connacht Distillery. Anyone who doesn't know, you have 4 provinces in Ireland. You have Ulster up in the north where I am, Ulster, Leinster, Munster, and then Connacht over in the west. So another one of the new distilleries that have appeared. Again, this is bought in spirit. It's not their own, but their own is coming. So this is quite light, very approachable, not particularly memorable if I'm honest, but this is bridging gaps until they get their own spirit out. Now, as I say, there's 3 in the range. They make gins and they make other stuff as well. So it's okay for what it does, but I wouldn't. At £65, I'm going to say it's a little overpriced. It's overpriced. I think if I was paying well, 45 would maybe be a more accurate price for it. 65, a bit too steep for my money. In terms of value for money, I would lose a point or two on that. It is very approachable, very nice, quite easy drinking, but it wouldn't be something I would sit and sip over of an evening. This would be more, I would call this a bit more of a summer whiskey than a winter one. Now, what I mean by that is because of the freshness of it. If it's quite warm, this you could drink quite easily. In the winter, you want something a bit more with a bit more depth to it. If I'm marking this, probably 6.5 out of 10. As I say, it's going to lose a point for value for money, but again, very clean, very fresh, and nice. But I think if you're going to do a double barrel, finishing it in they say the premium bourbon barrels, they're probably the first fill, so they're going to take up that bourbon taste, and take some of the characteristics of the bourbon. It hasn't done it too much, and that's probably because it's bottled slightly higher than 40%. I'll put a little bit of water in, nothing major, just put a drop, and we'll see what it does. That'll probably not do any good for this, to be honest. I'll take away some of the good characteristics. Yeah, the citrus is still there, but it's lost a bit of the depth, and actually become a little bit overly sweet. Yeah, the water doesn't help it at all. You're just getting a bit more of the sweetness comes through, and the layer of complexity with the nuts and the sort of meringue that's kind of evaporated. It's still very fresh, but it's very fresh without having any of the sort of balancing act of the nuttiness that was there. The sweet meat flavour, gone. Yeah, basically it's just sweet, a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of lemon. So I wouldn't drink it with any water in it. Probably quite good for cocktails, to be honest, but at £65 it's very expensive for it. So as I say, 6.5 out of 10. But there are good things to come from this distillery. I have heard that it would bring you to tears just how good their new next spirit is. But yeah, there's that fly again. There's actually, they're breeding. There's another one. No, so 12-year-old Spade and Bushel double barrel. It's reasonable enough, but again, I think it's a little bit overpriced. But that's another whiskey review. So enjoy, folks. Stay safe and God bless.